Wednesday, August 10, 1921. Dear Anna, your father tells me that you need money for your mission. He stopped by my mansion on his way to see you. He's asleep now, so I take this opportunity to place some conditions on it. May this donation smooth your memory of that awful day when we parted, as well as invite you to soften your tongue as it comes back to me that you still find my opinions disordered. I am close enough to death now to see that I must remove any bitterness and forgive you, and ask you forgive me, and I now enclose this aid, regardless of any mutually balanced exchange, and trust the Lord will unite the denominations in heaven, or perhaps on the stairway, as we hope one day to be together again, but more so with our Lord in heaven. In the meantime, dear Anna, take this large, to me, sum of money. It might even shock you. Hide it, but truly accept it. I love my little brother, your lively father, who calls upon me so rarely, and remains most devoted to you and me at the same time, dipping his feet into the wading waters and the rapids and the slippery rocks as only a former circus gymnast can. When he told me that you and your husband were wanting to start up a fish hatchery in Avoca, Indiana, of all places, well, he knew I would respond as an old sentimental bird. A bird that might return to a nest with her memory of another Avoca, that village in New York, not too far from my youth springs in Bath, or by the lakeside in Geneva, and still now, from the valley of the Cohocton River. It is an old love who keeps me in its currents. Imagine now how this bird, let's just make it an eagle, shall we? In his glory flies over the rivers and creeks of my Avoca, knowing what he's been through, and imagine how that same eagle, let's make it your father now, shall we? How he flies over our great America, how he might reach to your Avoca in Indiana, of all places. Now, really, can anything good come out of Avoca? Really? And how we might meet in the waters of some timeless poem or a clearing to forgive each other for that last communication, and how I am now ashamed of how I insulted your choice for a husband. What I regret most is my blindness in believing that you had a choice at all. Love probably makes it so that the heart is never the same, and you had no choice but to follow him. Your father probably never told you of my refusal to marry a Marine in the Civil War. His name was Charles Brother. He was the son of a large family whose parents and older siblings knew our family and ventured together, of equal wealth and refinement, who was known to my elders several generations back. And when our ancestors were assemblymen together and partners in the lumber and the milling prospects, they even bought shares together into the Michigan-Toledo Strip with their shipping ventures. Well, when Charles was in port at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, he would visit the Becker House in Manhattan while I lived with our relatives there, the picture framers, and this allowed me to attend school and become a teacher, which I did with perfect marks, and at the same time stay connected to Charles. When he would get on liberty, and when he would stop in and visit, the house shook with applause and dancing. He was much loved. He had great wit and great storytelling. Well, we'd follow his movements, glued to our seat until he was through with the punch. One night in July 1863, he stayed over. In the early morning we had breakfast, and as we all opened the door to send him off and head back to the Navy Yard, our faces fell because we felt something was off and moving in the streets, something demonic. The blocks were emptying. People were boarding their windows in silence. The animals seemed freakish. It was the dawn of the New York draft riots. Charles looked at me, but he could not kiss me because my aunt was nearby, coming in close to tell us that Charles had forgotten his flask. Annoyed, I went back into the house to retrieve it. When I came back, I had to literally push my aunt out of the way so I could see his face, but she was so close to him, nearly into his collar, that I could not hardly get close but to just blow a kiss. Oh, I was so mad at her. But his sincerity did land finally and calmed me down. And this was one affection that sustained me as he rushed down the street. I learned later from his letters that he was quickly sent back into our neighborhood to guard and saw many terrible things as the fires, lynching, tempers, and all the while in his heavy uniform for days as the rain poured down and he slept in the hallways. But as he protected our streets, I was displaced even more so, or so I thought, as a princess thinks, whisked away by my uncles against my wishes, away from the excitement, with the children, and taken to the country, where I worried about Charles, our home, and our things. Charles went back to sea, fighting in the awful Battle of Mobile Bay, and we corresponded, but I wanted affection close by, my things, and my comfort within reach. While he was at sea, I started to dance with others, having no faith that he would come back whole. While on leave in October 1865, he did come back, but nothing was the same. And we walked to Central Park, and he kicked the leaves and things. He wanted to marry me. Follow me, he said. He talked about his plans to go to Iowa after he got out of the Marines. He needed to complete his father's plans with the land investments there. Now listen, Anna, I benefited greatly from the derivatives of the speculators in my extended family. But by this time, the ladies had seen enough of war and the derivatives of vice close up within reach, and the smell was bad, with people messing with my things. And I wanted to be known in the newspapers as someone who fought back, who cleaned it up, with the suffragettes, who were my army, my chance to fight and get a little glory of my own, and stay close to Manhattan and use the political links that we still had in Albany. It was a rare thing I had in my hand. And I was against land prospecting. I could not follow him. It just sounded so unsanitary. Instead, I married a politician. This way we could advance the vote for the ladies, and as a nice-looking couple, we were invited all over. This required many hats for me to wear. But I loved to choose things myself. Of course, I wore many different hats, many with feathers, that annoyed my husband as we rode in the cab. I do remember that. He didn't like my choice. It was a shock to me when within months of my marriage, my husband lost favor and was not elected. He announced his plans to pay off his debts. He would return to his ancestral home in Avoca, New York, and set up a cabin there for his friends and to hunt game. There he would make leather and process the carcass of his friend's booty. He wanted to build more extensive hunting grounds for his political buddies and lobby them in the woods. His brand of strategizing required limitless cigars, liquor, and privacy. And the machines from Albany kept meeting in Avoca, sometimes camping along the Cohocton River. I became sickened by what I was required to do, living so close to the mosquitoes and cut-up animals. I could not stand the stench of rotting flesh, and there was no place for me to store my many fine hats, until I got good at the hides and the hiding and the wearing of many hats. When I found a way out to leave him, well, that's when the money started to flood in, and now I was the one rotting. Then, while shooting down a bird, my husband dropped dead. I turned everything over to his partners, but could not leave Avoca for its beauty. In choosing Avoca to remain here, well, I had no choice. Years later, a nephew from the Becker side of the family, someone who knew that house in Manhattan, he told me that on that morning of the New York draft riots, on the old threshold of real terror, It was Charles who insisted that I be whisked away to the country. Now, of all your kinfolk who might appreciate the stench coming your way as you start up this fish hatchery, it is the one who causes you the most frustration and stink who can come to your aid. And when you find yourself in shock at the smell of fish in your Avoca, let me know. And from my Avoca, I'll send you more of this. Anna, I have more. Let your father know, and I will give it to him so he can fly it over to you. Or we can meet in the waters.